Hello and welcome to the first installment of Tutorial Tuesdays. As you can see, we will be starting the creation of this fancy image right here. Today we are focusing solely, however, on the modeling and texturing of the robot character. There will also be a little bit of basic rigging, not involving bones or armatures or anything, just some parenting and empties, but still classifies as basic rigging. Anyway, let's get to it. Alright, let's get started. So today we are going to be modeling this robot right here. And we might get into basic textures if we have time. If not, I will include that in the next tutorial. So, to start out, we're going to use the basic Blender cube. And then we are going to, first and foremost, delete half of it. Because what we can then do is use the mirror modifier, which is one of my favorite things ever because it prevents us from doing twice the work. So, we need to make this beautiful little face. Also, before we do anything else, we also want to switch to cycles because we're going to be doing test renders and the final project was rendered in cycles. So for test rendering in Blender internal, that's not going to be accurate to what we want to see. So, to start off, we're just going to delete this face right here. So now we have a cube with an opening in it. And then we're going to start making this face right here. We're going to start by adding a circle in edit mode and setting this to 16 vertices should be pretty good. So then we're going to switch to vertex mode because you can't move a circle in face selection mode. We're going to rotate it 90 degrees. Scale it down to about the size of the eyes and move it around until it looks about right. We can always change its positioning later. Then we want this to match these vertices on the y-axis, so we're going to come up here into the properties panel. We're going to copy the y-coordinate by hitting Control-C. You don't even have to select it. You can just hover over it and hit Control-C. Then we're going to box select these vertices and hit Control V, and that will put this on the exact same plane as these vertices. Then we want a mouth. So we're going to start control clicking. Well, first of all, we're going to move the 3D cursor forward to match these vertices. So we can just go to the 3D cursor in the properties panel, hit Control V. Now it's in the same spot. So now when we create these vertices for the mouth, it should create it on the correct plane. So now everything matches up in the side view. Fantastic. So this obviously does not look at all like this mouth. So what we're going to do first of all is turn on clipping. So now if these go to 0, they cannot go past 0 on the x-axis, which is very useful since we're just going to be eyeing it. Anyway, so to make these match vertically, we hit scale, Z, and then 0. And then we hit scale X, 0. Because when you're hitting a number amount, when you're scaling down or over or on the y-axis, it will take your keyboard input for the amount. So the mouth looks like it goes about to the edge of the eyes, so we're going to move it out like that. And it also looks like it comes further down, similar to that. Great, we have a mouth. Very cool. This is starting to look like a robot already. So the mouth, however, needs to be beveled around the edges, sort of rounded. So how we approach that is subdivide, 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 and we're just going to start moving these vertices around and eyeing it. And then we can take this corner and drag it in. Now on my final model that I originally did, I only did one set of vertices to make it round enough because I wasn't planning on rendering it out bigger than 1280 by 720 and the robot wasn't going to be that close to the screen. However, then somebody asked me to render it out at 1080p and it just was not, high res enough. You could see faceting. So we're going to take these and subdivide them further by hitting W subdivide. And then we can round it off even more. And I think this should be perfectly fine. So a lot of people are going to kick me for saying this, but when you model in hard surfaces, ingons are completely acceptable. I don't know what all of this poppycock, can't think of a more appropriate word, like I don't want to say anything inappropriate while I'm recording, but poppycock, then, they're all talking about using quads and how you can only use quads to model. It's the appropriate way to do it. But if you're modeling a hard surface model that is not going to require any deformation, then using n-gons is perfectly fine. I'm all for quads if your character is going to have deformation, but this guy is a robot. He is a solid, rigid body. So we're just going to start creating faces to fill in the area. Like so. I think we can put those together and put these together here with the corners. And what I'm doing to create the faces is I'm just selecting the vertices that I want, and then I'm hitting F. So we're starting to fill this in. Also, it's a heck of a lot less time consuming to just use n-gons. So I used to be of the mentality that doing quads all day, every day was the correct path to follow, but this is a lot more convenient. And then when we smooth it later, or show it smooth, it will have some display issues because of the n-gons, but I'm going to show you a neat trick to fix that. So if we look at this, you can see that there's a clear edge where it sort of indents on the mouth. If you zoom out, I guess it might be a little bit easier. We're working off low-res sprites, so we're allowed a little bit of creative freedom. So we're just going to start selecting these edge loops, which to select an edge loop is Alt-click, and it will select that loop. Then we're just going to select the rest. And then we're going to hit extrude, or E for extrude, and then scale this in and move that in. So we want this border to be about even width all the way around. And it looks like we're losing our center line, so we're going to scale that down to 0 by hitting SX0 and then moving it in so it's clipped on the center and will not move any further. So to bevel this in, we're just going to hit Alt. Also extruding this in gives us a nice clean edge loop without any breaks. So then we can, I think we probably want this indent to be a little bit bigger. So we'll scale it in a little bit more, like so. And then we will just move it in like this. And then that's not a very smooth bevel, it's kind of ugly. So we're going to add another edge loop by hitting Control R, and then we're going to move it in, like so. I'm moving a little bit fast because there's a lot to go over in this tutorial and I don't want to waste your time, but also hopefully you have the ability on YouTube to track back and forth in the video to figure out what hotkeys I'm pressing to do what. I am, however, trying to mention as many hotkeys as I can. And again, my guy was a little bit low resolution for the original image, so we're going to make it a little bit higher resolution and add a nice smooth curve like that. So now I have a nice beveled in mouth. We're going to do the exact same thing with the eyes now. By the way, to get into circle select mode like this, you can hit C and then middle mouse button scrolling will make it bigger or smaller. So now we're going to extrude this guy in, scale him in until the edge is close to matching up with the mouth since it does on the actual robot. Then we are going to move it in about as much as this guy, then we can hit scale Y 0 to match them up perfectly. Then exact same thing here. We are just going to start beveling it, or making it nice and smooth, like so. Beautiful. So now we have beautiful, smooth eye sockets as well. So then the eyes look like they extrude in and then extrude back out to make these eye fixtures. So we're going to do exactly that. Extrude in, which is E and then Y to extrude it on the Y-axis, then extrude. We're going to right-click to cancel the movement of the extrude, but it's still extruded. So then we can just scale it in like that until it looks about right, and then we can extrude out like so. We want it to be a little bit inset from the actual eye sockets though. And then we can hit F to make a face. So now our robot face is starting to look like a robot face. Fantastic. So it looks like this. It's really hard to tell because it's just a few pixels, but I feel like it will look better if we bevel this. So if you actually have geometry here, you can hit Control B to bevel, like so. Something about like that is fine. We want it to be nice and round, so down here in the bevel properties, we can up the segments to 3, and we have these nice smooth eyes. Great, so let's start on the nose. The nose is going to actually be a completely separate object from the face. And don't worry, we're not done with the head yet. I know there's some roundness here and this incision here. I'd just like to get the face done before we move on to the finer details. So let's go ahead and add a circle. 16 vertices should be fine. We're going to rotate it. And this part of the eye bulb or light bulb nose is not even going to be very visible in the final image. So it does not matter how this part looks, but we're going to be nice people and make it look nice anyway. So this looks like it about goes that far out. Then we're just going to add a bunch of loop cuts. I added, let's see, 13. That should be fine. So then I just alt-click every other edge loop. And then this is a neat hotkey that a lot of you might not know about. If you hit scale and then Y, you can scale it on the Y-axis, and you all probably know that. However, if you hit scale and then shift Y, it will scale it on every axis except the Y-axis. Then we're just going to scale it down to make it look somewhat like a light bulb thread. Again, this isn't going to be visible, so it doesn't matter that it's not actually looping around like an actual screw thread. And then, just to make this a little bit cleaner, we're going to add a solidify modifier, like so, to give this geometry some thickness, like so. Fantastic. Great, so for the light bulb, I used a UV sphere, and this should be fine as far as resolution is concerned. I rotated it 90 degrees on the x-axis, moved it forward, and scaled it down until it looked about right, which, I mean, this looks close. So we will try this, and then we can match it on the x and y axis by copying x, pasting x, copying y, pasting. No, we don't want to do the y-axis, we want to do z-axis. So pasting z. So now they match up perfectly on this pole right here. Then we're going to take the base of the light bulb and we want it to match here because light bulbs are not perfectly spherical. This right now would look like a clown nose. So we can turn on proportional editing. You can either use the menu or you can do it the fast way by hitting O, and then we're going to scale this down by using the middle mouse key, or middle mouse button, scrolling, and then we will just move it in until it looks like a light bulb. Something like that should be fine. Then we might even want to scale this down a little bit. Okay, so now we have kind of a nose. I think we want to scale this entire area down, or move this one more in to this. And maybe even scale you down some more. So we have a fancy robot nose, and we can even smooth this so it does not look like a disco ball. Okay, so now we have the light bulb. Very cool. We're going to hit Shift H to hide everything except the robot head after selecting the robot head. And now we are going to start doing some of the finer details. So we're going to start by rounding all of the edges because he's not a perfectly sharp robot. I don't believe there is such thing. We want to be in edge select mode for this, by the way, so when we select the vertices, it won't select this face. Then we're going to do the exact same thing we did on the eyes and hit Control B to bevel it until it looks about right. Something around that roundness looks like it's probably about right. Cool. So then we want to work on this incision right here, which goes from the front of his head all the way to the back of his head. So, by the way, you can find this online on Google, this reference image, by searching Spelunky robot, and it will give you this entire sprite sheet on Google, which you can then use for a reference. I'm not providing it myself because I do have hosting space, but I don't want to break the law. So then we're just going to use the knife tool, which is K, to make some cuts around here, like so. And I want to make sure that some extra cuts didn't go in because sometimes that happens since it is a little bit finicky. And then we're going to continue cutting around here. You'll notice that with the knife tool it snaps to the vertices. And then we're going to cut down here. So I always get confused on the mirror modeling because I'm like, wow, this looks way thinner than this, but then you have to realize that it is going on both sides. So then we're going to do the exact same tricks we've been doing before to make sure that these all match up. Scale X0 and scale Z0. And I think we want these to be about the same height on front and back, so we're going to match those up as well. And this looks right now like it's a little bit too low, so we're going to box select them by hitting B and then moving these vertices up. So it's just like a small hairpiece. And then we're going to select this edge loop, or not, and we are going to, how actually did I approach this? Okay, yeah. What we can do is then cut in like this. Huge fan of the new knife tool, by the way. Hit enter because it glitched out a little bit, and then cut in like this and do the exact same thing. Now, I might not have approached it that way in the original model, but there are about a billion different ways to approach things when you're modeling. Like, this could be much cleaner, for instance, but it doesn't matter because it's a hard surface model and nobody's going to know the difference when looking at the final image. So what we're doing now is cutting right here at the corner so we have this nice solid edge loop. Then we're going to actually add some edges to the edge loop like so by cutting. Should have done this earlier but did not. This way we can make this all nice and round. Although we also need to make the cuts on the back before we screw up. Before I screw up, not you, you're just watching a tutorial. So, we want to scale these on the z-axis and x-axis respectively to make sure they're in the same spots, and then we can round this guy off nice and neat like so. Fantastic. That should make a nice head robot hairpiece. Then we're going to add an edge loop down the center by hitting Control R, and then scaling it in like so, scaling it down about halfway and then moving it down halfway just so it stays about in the center. Like so. Now we have a nice hairpiece. But again, I believe this needs to be rounder, so we can select this edge loop, which will not select all the way because we have an ingon, and then we can hit Control B to bevel it to make it a bit rounder until it looks about right. You do whatever roundness you see fit, and then we'll do the exact same thing over here. And that looks about correct. Now we have a nice robot hairpiece. So now, like I said, we're going to smooth it by hitting the shading smooth, and we're going to get these sort of weird artifacts. That's because of the ingons and the triangulation on the flat face. How we fix that is this neat trick right here. We select all of the faces involved in making it look weird, which is just the flat area, and then we hit I to inset it, like so, which will tighten it up around the edges and will prevent any sort of artifacting. And then we want to turn off the boundary so it has a nice solid loop all the way around the face. So if we actually set up some lights and check this out in the render, it will look completely fine, especially after we add some texture detail. And for the light, for testing, I'm just going to use a sun because it is nice and bright and directional. So now if we do test renders, we can see what the robot is going to be looking like. And so far it's looking pretty swell. So hit 3 on the numpad to go to side. We're going to inset these other faces just in case. And this is just one face. And that fixes our fancy little issues. Great. So to do the teeth, we're going to use a separate object, a plane to be exact. We're going to put it at 0, 0, 0, rotate it X on the 90 degrees, and then move it forward like so. And we're going to scale it down in edit mode so the scaling doesn't get messed up over, where are you? Okay, so the scaling does not get messed up over here. Okay, I had to be in object mode, of course. I'm just losing my mind. Okay, so we're going to scale it down to match. We always want this scale to be 1 in object mode usually, because it allows us to get nice good bevels and nice good insets and nice good UVs. So then we're going to move the teeth up to about here where I have them. And it looks like he has 4 teeth if you can count. I believe I can. So we're going to make 3 cuts, which equals 4 faces. Then we're going to add some edge loops like so, just around these edges. All nice and neat. They don't have to be perfectly even because nobody's going to know the difference, but if you want them to be perfectly even, especially on either side, you can just use a mirror modifier. Why do twice the work? So then we're going to select this edge and move them in, like so. So now we have these teeth, but they're not round. So for the teeth, I actually used a subsurf modifier, which will make them perfectly round rather than me just trying to eye it. And we can set that to smooth shading, and we can even add an extra edge loop on each of these to make them a little bit more square, like so. And then if we do a test render in the viewport like that, we have a nice robot head. Very cool. So numpad 3 to go to the side, we want to create these side things. So what we're going to do is create a, let's go with a cylinder. 32 vertices should be fine, again, especially if you want to rotate high resolution, you don't want, or render at high resolutions, you don't want any faceting to show up. We're going to scale this down, move it about here, and the head is actually not perfectly cube if you look at it, I believe. So we're going to take the head, select these vertices, and move it in like that so that this is evenly spaced from different areas. So then we're going to take this guy, cut him in half, and mirror him by deleting those vertices and making a mirror modifier. We're going to apply his rotation because otherwise the x-axis is not correct, and then we're going to move this out like so. And this is not that wide, so we're going to scale it in some like that, or just move it in some like that. Select these vertices, and we're going to make it nice and round using Control B for bevel. Very cool. Then we're going to take this, and it looks sort of like a donut formation, so we're going to scale it in, extrude in, and bevel these edges. By the way, Control Tab switches between vertex, edge, and face, if I did not mention that earlier. Then we're going to extrude you in, and it looks like it comes back out some, like so. And it looks like we're going to want to round this off some, and it also looks like these edges need to be further in. So our proportional editing won't affect this. We're going to hide it by hitting H after selecting it. Then we're going to select what we want to proportionally edit, hit O to turn on proportional editing, and then scale shift X to scale it on everything except the X axis. So now we have our neat donuts on either side of the head. Again, might not match perfectly. I will leave that up to you to make it however you want. And you really don't need the faces on the inside because they're not going to be visible. However, if you really want to add that nice hard edge, what you can do is move this out. First of all, unhide everything. Move this out. Select these vertices, hit F, and bevel them just a little bit, and then move them back in till it's just about colliding. So now we have these fancy donut formations of the head. We're going to save this now, since Blender does not auto-save. Well, and it does in Blend 1s, Blend 2s, whatever, but it doesn't always do that, and it doesn't do it reliably when you want it to. So we're going to save it as a new increment, because saving incrementally allows you to go back on previous saves. Then we're going to test our render again, and it's looking like a robot, or it's looking like that robot more specifically. I do think that the teeth incisions, however, do need to go in a little bit further, just to make them more visible. I turned off proportional editing right there. So now we have this beautiful little robot head. Let's keep moving. This looks like it might be a little bit rounder, but I'm not going to worry about that. I'm just going to leave that to you all to make your robots look more like the image or less like the image, as you please. So, moving on to the body, it looks about, using my fingers here to measure, which you can do on your own screen, it looks like the body, including the treads, is about the same size as the head. It goes up to about the hairline on the head. Which this hairline, now that I'm looking at it, needs to come out a little bit further. Okay, so let's start on the body. We're going to use a cube for that, Alt-G to move it back to the center of the screen, or 3D world, move it down. And we actually, let's go ahead and make it about the right scale. It goes about to the hairline from the bottom of the tread, so we'll do that. That way it will be close to correct. On my previous actual model that I used in my render, I don't believe that I made it completely accurate. Then we can move this forward so it matches up and scale it in like that to make his body. However, we actually want about a third of his body to be dedicated to the treads, maybe a little bit more. Then we can delete this edge loop now that we have our proper measurements. Then we're going to create 2 edge loops here and delete these vertices like so. Then we can select each of the 4 vertices respectively to make faces, like so. And that is great. Then we can take this and add some extra edge loops to make it nice and curved, like so. Which, actually, it looks like from the side, this front part, yeah, it looks like it might project out from the head a little bit, so we'll go ahead and do that. And then we'll take this and scale it in to make his neck area, like so. And then we can make this as round as we want manually, like so. By just adding edge loops, Control R, move and selecting them and scaling them. So now we have this nice little tread holder area. And then we can take the body, which looks like, since this is from an angle, it's hard to tell, but it looks like it is a little bit less wide than the head, maybe. Actually, from the complete back, it looks like it matches up. Okay, yeah, this part goes in a little bit like that. And then we can take you and scale you in like so. So on the original model, I modeled this little tank area, but we're going to skip that since it's going to be covered by the jetpack and not visible in the final area. But how you can approach that is using the knife tool to cut it out, and then doing the exact same thing we did with the mouth and the eyes. But again, I'll leave that to you. So I just noticed some smoothing issues on the eyes, which probably won't be visible due to them being indented and in shadow. But to fix that, you can just add extra edge loops to tighten it up. Like so. So now it looks nice. Moving right along, on the front, it looks like this area right here is cut out, which I did in my final model. And we want to scale these on the x-axis so that they match up with the base, like so. And then we want to separate this entire little area. Which, actually, now that I look at it, it looks like this part might be wider than this part. But we're just not going to worry about that for now. Actually, I am going to worry about that. I did not do that in my final image because I didn't notice it at the time. By the way, as I have said before, why do twice the work when we can use a mirror modifier? Then we are going to make sure this is nice and straight. And we're going to select this area and hit P to separate the selected into its own new object. We're going to hit Shift H to hide everything except it, and then we can start bridging these edges. Bridge, edge loops, fantastic. Now we have this piece, and then Alt H to unhide everything, Shift H to hide everything except the body. Add that, whoa, what happened there? F to add that face, and then space, bridge, edge loops to bridge those. By the way, if you hit space, you can type in whatever you want to do, like select or add anything really, or delete. And you have all these options from everything in the entire software. It's very convenient if there's not a hotkey for something. So then it looks like this part is a little bit rounder than the flat body. So we will take this guy and scale him out a little bit more, apply his scale by hitting Control A and hitting scale. Then we are going to scale these vertices in right here to match, and we're going to add a couple edge loops to make it nice and round, like so. Looking pretty cool, guys. Great. Moving right along, it looks like there's an incision down here for the neck, which I sort of ignored in my original design. Not my design, it's Derek Yu's design in my original model. But we'll go ahead and make that all the same. Like so. If we scale these purely on the x-axis, it will not hurt the slant. We just want them to be straight for our incision. Then we can inset this. That's how I did the original hairpiece. I inset it. So what you can do is select these faces and hit the I key to inset. It looks like that is not working because our normals are not correct. So I hit Control N to reset the normals. Then hit inset. It looks like sometimes when you have these keys on that are following, it doesn't always do your hotkeys. Okay, this is just straight up not working. Okay, I see what the problem is. It's because these faces are over here and I missed deleting them at the beginning. So now the inset should work perfectly fine, like so. We don't want to go too far or else it will cross over and create some ugly mesh, so we'll just go something like that. Add an edge loop like that, scale in, scale down, move down so it matches. And we have this nice incision where we can now add some more edge loops and make it, looks like there isn't already an edge loop here. So we can GG, good game. Now we can hit G twice to edge slide it, and then we can take these and make it nice and round. And we're also going to have to move to the front because it no longer matches the plane of the body. Move it on the Y until it matches. Now we have this nice round incision. We're going to do the exact same thing on the back. GG to slide this over and move this. Control 1 shows back view, by the way, in case you did not know that. It took me a while myself to figure that one out. And then it hit me and I was just like, wow, I am dumb. Then we can take these edges, like so. And we can hit Control B to bevel them. Nice and smooth. So now we have this nice neck area. Very cool. And then we're going to take the rest of the edges on the body that are visible. We're not going to worry about the neck area since nobody can see that. And we're going to bevel these as well. We're probably going to Shift H to hide that, select, and Control B to bevel. Nice and round. So then this creates this awkward area right here. So what we're going to do is use the knife tool to cut it on both sides. Then it's not going to finish that, so we can select the two vertices that make the end-gon right here and hit J to connect them. If you hit F, it will just create an edge. It won't cut across the face. J is new in B-Mesh. We want to then take this area and move it up to make it nice and round. And then we also want to cut across here to fix these end-gons. End-gons are bad in this instance because we're trying to create a nice round mesh. So that will make our nice body. Very cool. Alright, moving right along, let's go ahead and create these clampy hands. Not clammy hands, clampy hands. So we're going to do that by creating a circle. We will make it 16 vertices, that's fine. Rotate it 90 degrees on the Y-axis by hitting RY90. Then we're going to delete a little bit less than a fourth because it looks like they're not quite a fourth of a circle, which will give us this shape right here. We want to scale this down like so until it matches about the right size. Fantastic. Remember, this is going to be about twice this width, and it looks like it matches the width of the body about. Then we are going to take the clampy hands. They're not very wide, but we're going to go ahead and extrude them out. We're going to hit Alt-G. Oh, I'm hitting Alt-H right now. Alt-G. That's what happens when you don't look at your keyboard, folks. I tend not to look at my keyboard, but sometimes I mess it up. We're going to move it out like this, because this way we can mirror it, like so. And apply the rotation so it mirrors on the x-axis. Move it back down. We want the hands to come out to, it looks like, yeah, we want them to come out to about here. Also, looking at this now, it looks like our body is not quite right anymore. So, we can move it out, move it out. We want it to be a perfect slant though, so we'll just make it look about right. Cool. And then, so that little divot is a bit less noticeable, we can edge slide these and make the slant a bit more perfect. Great. So now we have these hands we're working on. I think I'm probably actually going to end up undoing what I did to the body, just because. I'll let you all fix that in your own models if you really want to. We want to make sure this guy stays at 0 on the x-axis, my mistake. Move him back in, like so. And then to make them to give them actual depth, what we're going to do is use the solidify modifier. And these look like they are probably about that thick. 0.933, just slide it until you're happy. There is no exact art to this. Then we're going to Shift D to copy on the Z-axis by hitting Z, and then we're going to scale Z -1, and then hit Control N to fix the normals so it will go in the right amount. Cool, now we have these little clampy hands. Now we can probably actually just merge these. I didn't even think about that the first time I modeled him. And then we can apply the solidify modifier after we're completely happy with it. I'm going to go ahead and save a new increment here. So we can go ahead and apply the solidify modifier. So we have these fancy hands on either side. And then we can add a cylinder to make this little part that connects it. 16 vertices should be fine because it's going to be fairly small. Nobody will notice the faceting, hopefully. If they do, they need to get a life. Then we're going to scale this down, move it out. It needs to be a bit wider than the hands, even though it's not in the front view here, but this is sprite art. It's not an accurate 3D model like our robot. Then we're going to bevel this in by hitting Control B. Again, beveling is an important thing in modeling because there's no such thing as a perfectly sharp edge in real life. Then this looks like it is a donut, so we will extrude this in and bevel these edges. Like so. So now we have our clamp hands, and it looks like this can even be scaled in a little bit further. Scale Shift X to scale on every axis except the X-axis. And we have our neat little clampy hands. That ingon will not matter at all, and I'll prove it by doing a test render, like so. Although it might actually matter once we smooth this. But you can fix that by adding a nice edge split modifier, which will split on sharp edges. It does look, however, like we need to tighten this area up a little bit, and this area up a little bit, just to fix any smoothing issues. Cool, very cool. So clampy hands, we're just gonna leave them sharp for now. You can make them smooth if you would like. Actually, I didn't do this in my original model, but let's go ahead and subdivision surface, put it before the edge split, and then we're going to add some edge loops. And this will make them a little bit smoother, and it will also fix the faceting going this way. The more times you model something, the more you notice. Don't model this more than once though, because you might bore yourself to death. Okay, so now we have these nice clampy hands that are nice and smooth. Very cool. And it looks like they attach to the body using another little thing like that. So we will go ahead and fix this smoothing issue right here by insetting this, like so. And then we will copy this guy. P to separate him so he is his own object. We're doing this purely because we are going to rig up the hands later to be able to move with the arms that are curves, which is a neat little trick that you might not know how to do. And we're going to GZ. I'm sorry, it's lagging behind because I'm assuming because of this thing, also probably because I'm downloading stuff, also because I have like a billion tabs open in the internet, and also because I am recording. So, make this a little bit bigger than this guy, like so, and we want this to be on the body like that, and come out far like that. So now we want probably a little bit of depth here where it's connected to the body. Let's pretend that it's connected by a rod or something, which you can't really tell in the final image, but in the sprite image, but it's important for a 3D model to look like things are connecting properly. So we can delete these guys, like so. Just these, not these. And then we're going to use the snap tools, which is this magnet right here. We're going to snap to face, and this button will allow us to snap to other objects. So we'll hit G and hold Control to snap, and it will, hey, you are going to snap and you are going to like it. Huh. I was having this issue earlier. Let's go ahead and hide these by hitting H. And I don't know why it's not snapping to the body. Oh, I'm hitting Control. I turned the magnet on, which means it snaps by default. Control is if the magnet is off. Okay. So the magnet's on, so we're just going to hit G and it will snap to the body like that. Perfectly. Of course, it now no longer matches this guy on the Z-axis. So we're actually going to hide you again, move you up until it matches, scale up until it matches because of my stupid mistake. And then we can turn off the magnet, move this guy out on the X-axis, extrude him in, like so. Okay, so when that's hidden, the extrude doesn't work properly. So we're going to select these edges, hit extrude, right click to not move them anywhere, scale them in like so, and then extrude them in like that. So we don't need to bevel this because we already have it working for us with the subsurf modifier. And we don't need the edge split for this guy. This will be perfectly fine by itself as long as we tighten it up a little bit. Cool. So now we have the arms modeled. We can move the hands forward. I don't know why I mirrored this, because we actually are going to want to copy this over legitimately in a second here. So this is how we rig up the hands to be able to move. We want the arms to be basically a metal curve. We're going to pretend that they're like Doc Ock arms from Spider-Man. So we're going to create a curve, Bezier, like so. We're going to rotate this, scale it down to 0 on the X-axis, and then move you here and move you here, like so. But these hands are going to need to hold the shotgun that we're going to model in just a little bit. So how we're going to rig that up is like so. We're going to, first of all, bevel this out so that it has a little bit of roundness to it. And we want to turn this to full, because otherwise you only get half of an arm, and I believe our robot would appreciate it very much if he had a whole arm. So we can turn the resolution up some, about 5 or 6 should be fine, because it's actually doing more than that, I believe. That's actually a neat test. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, it's doing way more than 6, but cool. So now we have our arms. We probably also want to scale Z0. I'm hitting the keys a little bit too fast for it to keep up with me, which is why it went in and out like that when I was trying to scale it on the Z-axis. Then we're going to select one of these vertices, and we're going to hit space and type hook. And then we're going to say hook to new object, and that will create an empty that we can move around, and it will move around the arm. Then we're going to take the hand, select that, and then select the empty, hit Control P, and set parent to object. So now the hands will move around with the arms. Very cool. And we want a little bit more curve, so we're going to move these handles out in edit mode. And now we have these nice curving Doc Ock style robot arms. So then we're going to take this, and this, hit Shift-E to copy, move it over, and scale X 0 -1 to scale it over exactly -1. And then just move it like this, and we have a nice Doc Ock arm here too that we can pose. Very cool. So that's step 1 of the rigging, which we'll get to later after we model the treads. The treads will be next. How we're going to approach the treads is like so. We're going to take a circle, like so, rotate Y 90. We actually want it to only be 16 vertices, because we can always up the resolution. Oh, it is only 16. Great. I thought it was more for some reason. Move it here, about the center of this, and we're going to delete half of it. Then we're going to add a mirror modifier on the y-axis, apply this guy's rotation by the way, and scale this down until it is a little bit bigger than this guy, because the tread will need to go further than his centerpiece, even though it doesn't necessarily in the original sprite image, purely because he'll need to be able to move around. So the tread isn't going to need to be animated. We're creating a still image. So what we can do here is, now that this is being mirrored, move him out on the x-axis like so, extrude him until he goes to about the side of the head like he does in the original guy, like so. And the body, still not quite right, but that's alright. I'll let you all fix that using knowledge that you learned in this tutorial. We'll turn clipping on and extrude that in, so now we have our nice tread shape. And then we will add a solidify modifier, like so, until it looks about right, which is somewhere around there. Should be pretty good. We'll add some edge loops. And this is where it gets a little bit tricky, because tread is not perfectly smooth like this. It has little indents in it. So we could go ahead and start adding our loops and do this, but then the solidify modifier makes it ugly. So how we fix that, also, before we do that, I'm going to delete this and also mirror it on the z-axis. So we're mirroring on every axis now, so we only have to model a fourth of one tread, which is nice. So we want edge loop here. We actually don't want to add that edge loop yet though, because it will be awkward. So we're going to apply the solidify modifier, and this will allow us to select these vertices and scale them in like that to make it look like actual tread. So we want another edge loop here right on the mirror. Take the center, scale it down like so. A face was created here that we're going to want to delete so it matches up all nice and neat. That rhymed. And then we can continue to make a tread. So we want to scale this on every axis except the x-axis, and that will keep it nice and even on the y and z, which is exactly what we want. And then just one more. The width of these treads isn't going to match up perfectly, but I've got news for you. Nobody cares. Again, scale shift X, and then one more right here, which this guy actually needs to be moved up like that. And we will scale you on the y-axis like so. And that gives us nice robot treads. However, we're going to want to smooth this so we don't get the faceting right here. And how we're going to tighten this up is by adding lots of edge loops. I would say just use the edge split, but that would give us a perfectly hard edge right there, and we really want to avoid perfectly hard edges on a model. And then, actually, you know what? I think what we can get away with is using the edge split modifier, like so, and then we can bevel stuff to give him that nice soft look. So we can bevel this a little bit, like so. By the way, okay, this is correct. I thought the scale might be off for a second there, but we don't want to bevel it with that many segments. We can probably get away with just like 2 segments here. Let's make it a little bit rounded, like so. And the same on the other side, like so. And we want to make sure this is close to matching, so we're actually going to turn the offset down a little bit. You can hold shift while scrolling offset or any slider in Blender to do smaller increments. And now we have our nice smooth tread with an edge split. So if the edge split is not properly splitting the bevel, you can change the angle that it splits to lower, and that should be fine for our purposes. Let's go ahead and render this out to see what it looks like. And that's looking pretty good. However, I do want to tighten this up just a little bit now that I saw the render, and that looks pretty good. So then it looks like there are these circles here, so we're just going to steal this from the hands by hitting Shift D to copy and moving it out. We're going to clear parent and keep transformations. And then we're also going to say object transform origin to geometry to put it right in the center like that. So this looks like it's probably bigger. It goes out to the tread. And then we can add a nice array modifier. Apply this guy's rotation, and we want this to be on the y-axis, not the x-axis. It looks like he has 3, but I had the exact same problem when I modeled this originally, that 3 wasn't enough. So I actually did 4. Shame on me for taking a little bit of artistic freedom. So we want these to match up about with the ends, otherwise how are they going to roll the tread? They're not going to roll the tread because this is just a still image, but we want it to look like it can roll the tread. 2, 5, and that should be pretty good. These probably need to be in a little bit from the tread. And then we're going to create a nice little solid area in here just so you can't see through to the robot, which we're going to do with a plane. Like so. We're going to take it, rotate it, apply the rotation, scale it down, and see how that penetrates through the tread? That is exactly what we don't want. So we're going to add some edge loops and move this in. And we have some issues here, so we're going to add more edge loops and move those until it matches up. This doesn't have to be super clean or anything, it just has to cover up the area. So then we're going to apply a mirror modifier. Wow, I just lost it. Okay, great, found it. Lost and found. With the mirror modifier on, we're going to move this out, hitting G. Again, I'm moving a little bit too fast for my keyboard to keep up. Then we're going to extrude it out like that until it's about at the rollers. Then we're going to take the rollers and we're actually going to add an edge loop, delete those vertices, select these edges, hit space, snap cursor. I know there's a hotkey, I never remember this hotkey, but snap cursor to selected. Then we'll say object transform origin to 3D cursor, and then we will add a mirror at the beginning of this object. You can slide it up and down in the modifier list by hitting these little arrows. Then we're going to move this to the center of the tread and scale this out like that. And then adjust this, and now we have our fancy treads. Then we're going to Shift D this to copy and put this at the exact coordinate except minus on the other side. So now we have our robot basically done. Very cool. So now, like I said, we don't need to do the back part because it's going to be covered up by a jetpack. So let's get started on that jetpack after we do a quick incremental save. And then after we do the jetpack and shotgun, we're going to get started on rigging this guy. Okay, so the jetpack. I have a perfectly great reference image for this. Under my images open, you can find all of these online very easily just by searching like Spelunky jetpack. But this is what the jetpack looks like. It's 2 cylinders. So we'll take not the isosphere, we'll take the icosphere. I don't actually know how that's pronounced. We want the jetpack to be nice and high resolution, so we're going to put this back to 32 vertices. I think my original model had it at 16, but whatever. Then we're going to scale this down like this on everything except the z-axis. The jetpack will come to about here, and I actually have a reference image of the robot with the jetpack too, which I found again on Google, the ultimate search engine. So this is about the scaling that it needs to be on the robot. It needs to go, wow, it goes, wow, that's actually a pretty tall jetpack. Scale Shift Z to make it a bit wider. It looks like this guy goes down past the tread, which means we might need to end up scaling the tread into the head. And then This comes down to about here. And then we are going to extrude this in like so. And then, to get a perfectly spherical top like that, we're not going to eye that. It's like a squished half sphere. So we're going to add a UV sphere, make sure it has the same amount of segments as our cylinder. And then we are going to copy this guy's location, which is 0, 0. And then move it down until it matches about up like that. We're going to select these vertices using box select and delete them. And then we are going to turn on snapping of vertices. We're going to hit scale, then hit control to enable the snapping of vertices. We actually want to scale it only on everything except the z-axis. And then we're going to select this, snap cursor to selected, select all of this, and then we're going to scale down based on the 3D cursor, which using this little dialog right here, you can select 3D cursor. Now when we scale down, it will follow the 3D cursor, and we get our nice jetpack top. So we still have this extra face right here, which we'll delete. These vertices aren't matching up perfectly. Dear God. It's the end of the world. No, we can just hold control, snap it while moving, and then we can hit space and do remove doubles. Then we can select this edge right here and notice how it's nice and round. We'll bevel it and even add in a third segment to give us the top of our jetpack. Very cool. So then we have to do the bottom of the jetpack, which looks like we extrude. We want to set this back to median point, how it was before. Scale this in just a little bit, scale it down just a little bit, scale it down in just a little bit, extrude it, scale it down just a little bit. And then we all know, it's not visible in the game, but we all know jetpacks have holes on the bottom, like so. Then we're going to take all of this and do some mad beveling action to make it all nice and smooth, like so. Then we're going to take the jetpack, move it till it is about here. It's alright if it overlaps a little bit. And we're going to mirror it on the x-axis. And then move him to 0 on the x. So now we have this nice jetpack, which from the front should look fine. And we can smooth him out and fix all of the smoothing issues by tightening everything up a little bit, like so. And we can even add a nice edge split for the truly sharp edges. And that is our jetpack. Let's move on to the shotgun, which is probably the most difficult part. At least it was for me the first time around. So let's go ahead and open our reference for the shotgun that I found, which is right here. And we're even going to, from the front view, apply this as a background image, which you can do right here in the properties. So we have our nice shotgun background image. Let's move it up on the y-axis just to be neat. Then we're going to start by creating the barrels. I like double barrel shotguns, so this is going to be a double barrel shotgun, even though you can't necessarily tell from this image. We're going to turn on incremental snap and rotate it 90 degrees. Move it up here, scale it on everything except the x-axis, apply the scale for when we texture it later. Then we're going to scale it on the x-axis until it matches this. Then this part is going to be so small that it doesn't matter if we just eye it, rather than doing the whole sphere trick. You can do the whole sphere trick if you truly want to. I'll leave that up to you. We just want to make sure this will look smooth enough when it's rendered out, because faceting is the devil. So then, shotguns stereotypically have barrels, otherwise where would the ammunition come out of? Like so. Then we want to tighten up the edges, like so. Could use an edge split modifier here, but I'm just feeling like tightening today. And we probably don't want this to be perfectly flat, so we'll round it out just a little bit like that. That rhymed. Great. So from the top, this should have 2 barrels. So we will copy you like so. And then shotguns have I'll open the other reference image just so you can see. Actually, you can't see it in the other reference image, so I'm just going to say you don't get to see. Tough. So we're going to add a cube here, but shotguns have a little area in between the 2 barrels that holds the little Amy thingy. I don't actually know what that's called, so I'm just going to call it the Amy thingy. We're going to scale this down on the y-axis. And this does not have to be perfect, it just has to, first of all, be directly between these two. So we're going to join these. I did not mean to hit Control H. Control H actually hides it in the render. What is Control Shift H? Huh. Well, I'll turn it back on right there, because I screwed up and accidentally hit Control H. So then we will object transform origin to geometry. That way we can copy this guy's exact y location and paste it on this guy, so he's directly in the center. Then we're going to scale this guy down until it goes through the barrels like that. Then we're going to do the same thing right here and right here, and that should be close enough. So now we have this nice area that goes between the barrels like so. We want this to go all the way to the end like that, and then we need to make the Amy triggery thingy, which will be a cube. We'll scale it down to match, apply the scale for when we texture it later, and we don't want the UVs and textures to be weird. Scale it out to match that, and then paste the same y coordinates from earlier. Scale y. Sometimes it doesn't register the first key, because again I'm moving too fast for it to keep up, which is probably a bad sign for trying to get people to follow along. But you all are intelligent, and I have faith in you and your ability to rewind a YouTube video if you didn't catch it the first time. So we will smooth this out so the insides are round, and then we will edge split it like that. And I think that's pretty good for an Amy thingy. So, moving right along, we'll do the handle next because this combining juncture is a little bit difficult. We will add a cube, rotate it, scale it down, apply the scale, apply the rotation, scale this out. This whole area looks like it's rounded, so we'll go ahead and do that too. Since this is perfectly from the side, we're just going to try to match this a little bit, although it's going to be a little bit bigger since the image is skewed. We're just going to round this out some more, like so. And then we are going to extrude this and rotate it and scale it and keep moving it around, like so. By the way, just in case you aren't keeping up with the keyboard hotkeys that are flashing at the bottom of the screen, or just in case you are unfamiliar, R is rotate, S is scale, G is grab or move. So that creates our nice little shotgun handle. We want this to be in the exact same y coordinate as the barrels. This isn't perfect. I'm going fast here because we need to hurry up so we can finish this tutorial, and I'd like to get to texturing of the robot today, but this video is already an hour long, so we gotta speed up. So, just like that. Then we're gonna add a nice subdivision surface modifier, like so, and tighten all of the things up like this, just so we get that nice rounded, worn sort of wood look. Very cool, and we can even smooth him out because we have enough geometry. And that looks pretty good for the handle to me. Now let's do the combining juncture. This is the hard part. We're going to need a cube here. We're going to scale it down on the z-axis, move it up until it matches the barrels and until it matches the handles. The handle looks like it could afford to be a little bit bigger, and the barrel looks like it could afford to be a little bit rounder. So this whole area looks as though, first of all, it needs to match up on the y-axis. I'm just hitting Control V over the y-axis since I still have the previous y-axis selected. Then we are going to scale this area down on the y-axis to match the handle. And we're going to scale this area down on the y-axis, and this area down on the y-axis as well. Great, that looks like a shotgun now. No, it does not. So we're going to add a subdivision surface modifier, tighten you up. We'll tighten up the edges later after we get this about right. I personally, in my design, moved this down some so it matched the handles better. Or not the handles, the barrels. You don't hold the gun by the barrels. And we're just going to keep adding edge loops and sculpting this out until it looks about right. Like so. And then we can even scale all of these corners in after we add that edge loop. I'm not saying exactly everything that I'm doing because I'm assuming that you are intelligent beings that can follow along. I have faith in you. Alright, so looks like these come down like that. And if you look at this, it looks like this is a nice sharp area. But first, we're going to inset the area for the barrels by hitting C, circle, selecting all of these faces. Inset, like that, and then we want to not select the boundary, or border, outer, and then extrude this in, like that. Then we can select these faces and move them further out to cover the barrels a little bit more. Which it looks like they might need to cover them a little bit less. It's looking interesting. I wouldn't say it's looking fantastic, but it is. You get the point of how I modeled the shotgun, and I will let you tweak into oblivion to make yours look more correct than mine. I'm just going to keep sculpting vertices around here, though. And we're actually going to then take this area. This part I'm actually going to do a little bit different than I originally did. We're going to take this entire area right here, extrude it down, rotate it so it will match up a little bit with the little cocky mechanism. I really need to learn the technical terms for all this stuff before I make tutorials. Oh, okay, so this part doesn't match up. We're just going to make life easier and mirror the whole thing. Like so, and add modifier mirror and on the y-axis, and you'll notice this part is sharp. That's because the mirror modifier is after the subsurf modifier. We want it to be subsurfing what we're mirroring. So then we will select these faces right here, extrude these down and rotate them until it looks about right, and scale them in on the y-axis and move them in on the y-axis. And delete these nasty center faces because they are unnecessary and will cause geometry problems. Then we want to move these vertices down, like so. Looks like I might have missed some faces somewhere, right here to be exact. Alright, this is starting to look halfway decent. Very cool. So, if you notice in his design, Derek Yu, the creator of Spelunky, this whole area is kind of sharp a little bit. So to do that, we're just going to add some edge loops, but first we're going to delete these faces and rely on an in-gon later. Hey, delete faces. Okay, the problem is I don't want the edge loop to go all the way around. So what I'm doing is deleting these faces and then doing the edge loop so we can get it sharp in just the area that we want it. Cool. And then do the same thing right here, like so. So now when it's all smooth, we'll have that nice edge. And then we'll also do the same thing right here. It's not exact. His looks like it goes the opposite direction, which is fine. We can sort of fix that by moving you up and moving you up using edge slide. None of this is matching up perfectly, but in the final image, nobody will know the difference. Then we can add a face there. And delete this weird awkward face that was created, if we can find it. Okay, it's gotta be this guy. It was not that guy. There is some serious awkwardness. Okay, I see what's happening. I see what's happening here. We created this face, and it also selected that edge when we were just trying to select these edges, which means we don't even need these edges. So we'll delete those edges and then make our crappy N-gon. Cool. So this is giving us a neato shotgun. So if you really want this area to slant in like this and like this, you can do that in your own model. I'm not going to worry about it too much for the meantime. I think it will be just fine the way it is. Yeah, I'm perfectly fine with this. So then we need to also fix the hole here, just hitting F. And we can inset it so it will not be awkward. Awesome. So this is a good start to our shotgun. We're going to save incrementally. This will be version 5. You should probably be saving more often than I am, because saving is the lifeblood of Blender. So we will move this guy here. We're making the cocky part now. It's not oh my gosh, I hit S like 3 times and it didn't register any of those times. That is just going to get on my nerves. We want this to be a little bit thinner than the barrels. So we'll scale. Okay. If you hit Y without scale, it'll split all of your edges. We don't want that. But it didn't register my scale, so I had to make sure that I undid the badness. We'll add a subdivision surface modifier. We will add edges until it looks about right. Something like that ought to do. Like so. Then we'll go to the other view, add one here, and in my original model I did this and made this curved. Again, I'm just moving vertices around. This is all modeling really is. Just gotta sculpt it until you like it. Like so. So this will suffice as a shotgun. You can make all of this colliding area neater in yours if you really want to. If you're even following along, you could just be watching to pick up tips, but you get the idea as to how the shotgun is constructed. Great. I think this guy can afford to come in more. And then also, what I did in the original one is I extruded this guy out just to create a little bit of an edge there. Cool. So that will give us essentially our shotgun. This can afford to come down some. And we can even move it up in the... No, it doesn't even go up in the center there because of the connecting part. Cool. So that is a simple Spelunky style shotgun. Oh, we also need the trigger. So we're going to take a cube for that, scale it down. We can move it on the y-axis later. Match this area, extrude, rotate, move this to match this area. Extrude, scale, move the edge loop all the way here, because if you do it here, the thickness isn't going to be the same as this. Then we can move this and rotate it, so now the thickness is consistent. Same thing here, and same thing here, just to make it all nice and round. Very cool. Then we also will need to move this to 0 on the y-axis. Not 0, but wherever the other stuff is. Scale it down on the y-axis. And we can even adjust these to make it a little bit more appealing. like so. Then we can add a cube, scale him down nice and neat like that, put him up here on the handle, and I'm trying to tell where the trigger is. Okay, so it curves in like a half moon sort of, so like that, and then like that, and then scale shift Y to scale on every axis except the Y axis. Then do this, and it can afford to be a lot less curved, like so. So that gives us a trigger for our shotgun, and we want this guy to be at 0 on the local y-axis, like so. So my original shotgun that I modeled did not have this big of an area, but we really need a big area for the clamping hands of the robot. So then, to make the shotgun all basically controlled by the same object, we are going to, I do not care if you're playing Dota on Steam. I'm going to pause this and actually turn off Steam so we don't get these notifications. Okay, now no more notifications should pop up. Great. So we are going to add an empty. We'll use a cube. That should be fine. And then we will scale this up just so it is big enough, kind of. And then move this to the same area on the y-axis just so it's all nice and centered. Then we will select all of this stuff and hit Control P to parent it to the empty. I missed something, which is completely fine. We can select this, and hit Control P. So now we have our shotgun basically rigged. So now, whoa. Did I lose my robot? That's bad news. Okay. So it looks like we lost the rest of our robot body, so it's a good thing we've been saving incrementally. Let's go ahead and save. Okay, this all ended up on the wrong layer. I thought I was going to have to do some import action. Okay, I just modeled it on the wrong layer. That's fine. So we're going to take our shotgun layer and our robot layer. By the way, modeling on separate layers can always be very helpful. Then we're going to take the shotgun, make it go about between the two hands like that. Then we're going to take our fancy rigged hands. We could probably rotate the shotgun some like that too. Take our fancy rigged hands and position them on the gun, like so. Doesn't matter if this part of the clampy hand is going through it because nobody will know the difference from the right angle. Then take this clampy hand, rotate it like so, and move it out so it's on the trigger. Like so. So there we have our fancy rigged robot shotgun with hands. You can select all of that and even move it in some. Then we can subdivide this arm and add another hook object just in case we want to move it out some, which, bad idea. Wait, actually I wonder if I can set the, let's see, on the constraints. Huh, hooks usually go to, oh, it's a modifier, okay. That's interesting. Okay, so I just want to undo all of that because what was happening is I already positioned this. When we created the new hook, it was all wrong. So we're just going to ignore doing that and not have another hook. It'll be fine, nobody will notice. Great, so we have our robot and shotgun and jetpack. Very cool. Now, let's do some final cleanup and then get to work on texturing this bad boy. So we want this to be smooth, so we'll smooth it out and then add an edge split. We want this to be smooth around here. Only these loops though. So we'll select these and make them nice and smooth, and also apply an edge split. And we can up the required angle to 45 so it won't split where we don't want it to. Then we can start rigging everything. So We want the head to be an object, so we can move that individually. So we'll go ahead and create a cube empty, move it here to where the head is, about, move it to 0 on the x-axis. That should be fine. We're literally just going to use it to position him. So then we're going to select everything, teeth included, and these bolty things. Select this, Control P. So now we have a fancy head control. Then we can add tread controls, which the tread need to be cleaned up. They need to be separated from being mirrored. So we're going to Shift H to hide everything except these. We will apply the mirror and separate that by hitting P. And we will do the same thing with the interior portion. Apply the mirror, separate that by hitting P. So now we have this whole tread and this whole tread. Where their center is doesn't matter because we're going to rig this using empties. So we will create plane axis, Alt-G, move it down till it's about the right location. It really doesn't matter. Then we are going to Shift D and put this at the exact same location except negative. We will select all of you fancy things, deselect that, select that, Control P, and we have our fancy rigged tread, except I just made a horrible mistake. We don't want these to be parented yet because the empties aren't in the right location. We want them to be about center in the tread. Okay, so now we can select all of this fancy junk. Right. Then we can hit Control P, so we have that parented. Then we can do that, hit Control P, parent it, and we have these fancy tread controls. And then let's pretend that we also might want to move the tread together. Let's add a sphere to differentiate the stuff. Move it down till it matches about the tread, select the two tread empties, and parent that to the sphere. So now we have the sphere, which we can move both treads, and then we can move the individual treads, like so. Very cool. Then we need a jetpack, can be moved by itself, that's fine. So we've got head, shotgun, hands, tread, have to undo the tread parent because I did the exact same stupid mistake where it wasn't in the right position. Don't make the same mistakes as me, ladies and gents. Control P, okay. Then Alt H. So now we need a final body one, which will control the body, but it will also control all of the other empties. So we'll create a cone just to differentiate things, and we'll make it big. We'll say it's about that big, just because it controls everything. We want this to be about in the center of the body, I guess, because that's where his center of rotation will be. Then we can select that empty, that empty, that empty, that empty, that empty, that empty, and hit Control P. So now this controls everything except the body, which is what it was originally for. So we want to select the different body pieces and Control P those too. So now that controls everything except the curves. This is why I'm moving stuff around to make sure everything's parented properly before I try to pose it. So now that's all parented, and now we just have the jetpack left. So this will control our entire robot. So for the final image, we're going to want him to look like he's jumping off of a ledge. So we're going to rotate the head backwards like that. We're going to, and you can pose your robot however you want. We're going to rotate this like that so it looks like he's sort of jumping. It doesn't matter that it's colliding. Probably maybe even down like that some. Cool. Yeah, we're going to save this incrementally really fast. Actually, we're going to undo all of our posing and then save it incrementally, so we have a version that's fully rigged but not posed. Save it. Now, save a new increment. 8 is after 9. Or after 7. 8 does not come after 9. Trust me, I know my math. Okay, so rotate this. We want him to be like that, but the head is sort of like he's leaping. Then we want to rotate this on the x-axis like so, like he's sort of jumping. I've changed my mind about rotating them out at all. I think that's wrong. We wanted the individual tread controls, so we want to stagger them a little bit so it looks more natural. Like so. So then we can reposition our camera and get started on texturing. So we're going to take our camera, rotate it like so. And let's get started texturing this bad boy, and then we'll focus on the background later. So to start texturing, we're going to start with the head. We're going to need a material that we can use to make it look like metal. So I'm going to go download some image from CG Textures. You can do the exact same thing. cgtextures.com is phenomenal. So I'm going to pause here for a second. Okay, so I went ahead and found this concrete image on CG Textures. Concrete is great for not just texturing concrete. You can use it to add detail to your metal, to anything. It is just great detail imagery. So we're going to switch to the node editor. We're going to do a little bit of reorganizing here. We're going to have 4 windows, so we can leave this one constantly rendering. I hope it records all right. And we can get to work on our materials. We want to go ahead and use nodes. And this does not look like metal yet. Now the trick to metal is that first of all it is almost all reflection. So we're going to add a mix shader to start making it reflective. I'm going to pause this and find a sky as okay, so I'm going to be using a mirror ball that I photographed myself, but you can really use any image in the background under the environment texture to test out your reflections on your materials. So I am using reflectionsphere.jpg. And I'm going to set this to mirror ball so it's correct. So now if I were to rotate around, you can sort of see the environment. There's me taking the picture. Aww. I miss Savannah. I used to go to school there. Okay, so now we will be able to test our reflections much better. So we want to mix this with a glossy shader. So we have glossy going into diffuse. We want this to be mostly reflective, so we're going to set this to 0.9 so he's very reflective. And I'm going to go ahead and set my preview samples up to like 20, I guess, just so it'll get a little bit better. This is probably going to go a little bit slow because of the recording. This material, by the way, will be robot metal. Then we want him to be a bit darker, so we're going to match the gray, basically, of him. And like I said, for metal, actually I don't know if I said this already, for metal, the trick is to make the reflection color the same color as the actual diffuse material. So there's a little bit of diffuse here, but we really want it to be mostly reflection since he is metal. So then, we don't want him to be perfectly solid flat metal, so we're going to add a displacement image. So we're going to do texture, image texture, we're going to find our concrete and plug it into the displacement. Now that's not going to work immediately because he's not UV unwrapped. However, I am very lazy. So first of all, we have to apply the mirroring. I forgot to do this earlier. We're going to have to be doing that a lot, actually. So then we want to unwrap him, Smart UV Project, which is awful form. You usually never want to do that, especially in the industry, but for a simple still image like this, it probably will end up cutting where we want it to. Like, we won't see any seams, basically. So now if we render that again, we'll see that the concrete is being applied as our bump map. However, it is very, very strong right now. Also, we want to use non-color data, just so it will use the black and white properly. And then we can up the contrast using a color ramp to make it a bit more splotchy, like sort of rust areas, kind of. Neato. The more you crush it, the less black and white values you're going to have, and the more flat it will be. We're essentially clipping the image by doing the color ramp. Okay, and we want this to be a much weaker bump. You can either do this by mixing it with a 50% until you're happy, or just setting these. Let's set this to, we want it to be very, very little. So let's set this to 0.9 brightness. And that's getting better. And then we also input texture coordinates, UV, and then input vector mapping, which will allow us to tile this image a few times just to get it nice and small detail-wise. So then metal is not going to be perfect. This material is not going to end up exactly the same as my previous one, by the way. We're just sort of winging it here and trying to make it look as good. So, or better even. So then we want to shader, mix shader with a diffuse. Again, same hotkeys apply in the node editor as they do here. And we will make this diffuse darker and a little bit orange, sort of like rust. And then we are going to take our fancy image texture, add another color ramp to convert it. And we're going to use that as a mix factor. And we can crush it. Okay, we probably want color data for this. I'm actually not familiar with what's necessary for color data and what isn't, but we're gonna change this to back to color and move this up here. Okay, so if we make this diffuse like red or something, then we should get a good idea of what is being changed. Okay, so this is purely for visualization purposes, just to get that little bit of rust added in. So now we're going to change this back to our gray, make it darker, and make it a little bit orange, just to add some nice detail to the metal. So this is looking pretty good, I believe. We don't want any area of him to be perfectly reflective though, so we're going to set this, perfectly flat though, so we're going to set this to 0.9. And I'll let you all play around with your own values, by all means, please do. We're going to turn the sampling on preview to 0, so it will go indefinitely. And we're probably even going to want to turn the bump down a little bit. So we're going to take this guy and put him at 0.95. We want it to be very subtle. And that looks kind of like metal. Very cool. We can probably even darken this diffuse just a little bit. Make him super grungy. He's been exploring a cave. So then we want to do the same thing on all of these. We'll apply the robot metal to the clamps to the body, and to these rollers, and to these insides here, and to these rollers, which aren't visible right now, and to these insides. I am huge on just reusing the same material. That's why I like procedural methods of sort of material texturing, because they allow for using the same material on a lot of areas of the robot. If this was a professional project, I'd want to paint rust and stuff in the right areas, but since this is just a personal fan image, this is perfectly acceptable, and it looks pretty decent. So we're going to apply the mirroring on this guy, and we're going to do the exact same thing. We're going to smart UV project it, and now if we pan around here, we can see that the detail will be coming through in the body, hopefully. Oh, he does not have the robot metal. Okay, great. Yep, so we have some nice bumpiness there. And we're going to do the same UV unwrapping for these. Smart UV project. And smart UV project. And smart UV project, and smart UV project, and smart UV project. And gotta do it on everything, guys. Should have done it earlier when we modeled it before duplicating, but I did not think about that. I missed selecting because I couldn't see if I was selecting anything, so I didn't unwrap it properly. Okay, so now we have the robot metal basically done. So now we want to do the eyes, which for those I just straight up did a white emission texture. So we can select the head. In the industry, per-face texture assignments are generally highly frowned upon. In Blender, the system is set up very well for them, so I tend to use them myself. So we're just going to select all of the faces we want to have the eye texture. By the way, I'm hitting period on the keypad from my number pad to, oh wow, I'm selecting the wrong thing, to center my view on stuff that I'm working on. Then we are going to assign this new material to these eyes. Not just the one eye. My bad, I selected these, created the material, and then did not assign it. Okay, and then we are going to make it new and make it a white emission with maybe a factor of 2, just so we can see some nice glowing, because that's pretty cool looking. Then in compositing later, when we have the background, we'll add some glow to the eyes so they don't look just so flat. So the light bulb nose is also going to be an emission, but it's going to have more than that. We're going to take this, delete it, make a shader that is a mix shader. I'm going to go ahead and save really fast, not incrementally because I'm lazy. Then we're going to mix a glossy with a factor of like 0.025, just so we get some nice reflection. And it's going to be red, like so, mostly red. Then we're going to mix that with an emission shader, which will also be red. And we can up the strength to 2 or 3, just so we can start to see a little bit of lighting coming from the light bulb. We could put this at 0.05 because I want the specular to be a bit bigger. And we're actually going to start lighting this rather than with the sun. We're going to use an area light, because those get cooler looking speculars. Which, how you do that is you take a plane, put it in your lighting position, and then you give it an emission material. And you up it until it looks right. So that seems pretty good. So we're currently mixing too much with the emission, so we're going to back that off to about 0.2. No, we want to go higher, because 0 is this slot, 1 is this slot, anything in between is between. But we want it to be more towards the reflective side, I think. And probably even back to 0.025. And then light bulbs are not, like, they have a Fresnel effect, which my original image did not, but now that I'm thinking about it, we want that. So we're going to mix the glossy with a diffuse that is the correct red color. And then we're going to do this based on a factor of layer weight. What that allows us to do is do the facing ratio. So now it is currently less reflective as it goes towards the edges. You can do that by testing like this. So we want it to be swapped. We want it to be more reflective as it goes to the edges. And then we'll put this guy back to red. By the way, you can do the same Control-C, Control-V trick on colors. So that will work for our nose. This guy is just going to be a solid sort of chrome material. So we're going to just add a glossy material. Make it a little bit darker, and about 0.15 should be a good roughness for that. Maybe even darker, just to mix things up. Who knows? As long as it looks decent. That's all that matters for this image. So the teeth are going to be they're not just going to be diffused like that, because that is a little bit boring. So we're going to do the same layer weight trick we did with the nose here. And mix that up. So, by the way, you see all these little fireflies bouncing around. What you want to do for that is turn off caustics, and you can also filter the glossiness, and that should fix it some. Perfect. So, for the mouth anyway, we're going to make this a mixture of glossy. You want this to be basically perfectly reflective, like so, and then we're going to make that reflective based on the layer weight, which is, again, input, layer weight, facing. I want this to be the same as the light bulb, so we actually want, okay, I think we have this correct, where glossy is 1, that's 0. Because black will be on the inside, white will be on the outside from the layer weight, so black, white. Let's make this even a little bit less so, and yeah, that should be pretty good. We want the whole thing to be slightly reflective though, so we're actually going to convert using a color ramp. This will map the blacks and whites again, and we want the white, no, we want the black to be brighter, so the whole thing is reflective. But not quite that bright, just a little bit. Like, that should be pretty good. And then let's go ahead and brighten these up to 1, because this is a cartoon image, it doesn't need to be realistic. And I think this guy can even be a little bit brighter as far as his metal is concerned. So let's go ahead and brighten this guy up some. In both the glossy and the diffuse. Like so. Then we can move on to the tread, which should be easy. We're not even going to UV unwrap this. We're just going to create a new sort of rubber material, which how you do decent rubber. Everything in the world is slightly reflective, by the way. So I always add glossy to almost all of my materials. So we're going to do shader mix like that. And you guessed it, we're going to add a glossy in. So now that is a bit too glossy, first of all, and we want these to be dark like tread. And we want it to be, if you set this down, like to 0.1 or something, it will still be plenty glossy where it needs to be. And then we're going to roughen this up to about 0.3 so it looks like a nice diffuse rubber. So then, for the color, we're going to hover over this and hit Control-C. Then, we're going to add an input, which will be actually texture. We're going to add a noise texture, like so. And we're going to add a color, mix RGB, and the factor will be the noise textures factor. Then we're going to paste our color, and we'll add a red here just temporarily for testing purposes, because right now the noise is not very contrasty. So we're going to take a color ramp to convert it and make it sort of contrasted, so we get nice uniform splotches. And by the way, you'll notice this is a bit stretched because we didn't UV unwrap it, and right now it's trying to use generated or UV coordinates. I'm not sure which one. So we want to use a input, texture coordinate, sorry, and then object, which will make it a much smaller, but then you can sort of change the scale around. So we want this to be about, I don't know, let's say 7. We want to repeat this a bit more to make more consistent splotches. Do it until you're happy. Just mess around with the values. Don't copy me exactly. We're going to copy paste that and make this a bit brighter. It's just going to be subtle noise, but it will help in breaking out the final image. And we're going to do the exact same material on the tread, so we want to name this material tread. So there we go. The robot is basically textured now. If you really wanted to, you could do a per face assignment and make this area a little bit darker, add some variation. But let's move on to the shotgun. The barrels are going to be a dark metal, but they're sort of a painted metal, so you're not necessarily going to look metal. How we approach that is with, again, you guessed it, shader, mix shader, and glossy, like so. And the barrels are going to need to be darker, and darker. And we're probably going to want them to be more glossy, so about 0.7 should be pretty good for the barrels. And then the barrels are going to be like a pounded metal, so we want them to be a bit noisy as far as displacement goes. So we're going to use a noise here, just plug that into the displacement. We want the texture coordinate to be object, because that will use the object as basically just a 3D container for the texture coordinate. And then we're going to get this until the size is about right. The detail can be lower because it's just pounded metal. And we can set the size down, I think to about 3 should be pretty good. Maybe 4. Then take the converter color ramp and up this so the bump is subtle. Like so. And then we have our shotgun barrels, and we can take the material, name it shotgun barrel, and we can apply it to everything else that needs it. Like so. And this, like I said, I am lazy, so I reuse materials all the time. I do things as procedurally as possible on almost every project I work on. And you notice that the noise is different scale on this and this. That is because this object scale is not set to 1. So we're going to go ahead and set that. And you'll notice that fixes everything immediately. That's why you want the object scale to always stay at 1. This guy's isn't even at. Okay, that was the, I gotcha. That was the empty. Okay. It's hard to see what you're selecting in this view. So, moving right along, we're going to create a wood material for the handle now, completely procedurally, because it's a cartoon and doesn't need to be super realistic. So, we will create a new material. And let's work on the colors first. A good way I found to do this is with the texture, and we want the wave texture. So if we plug this in right now to the color, you get these stripes. We're going to set the coordinate to object, and that makes it even smaller. Great. So what we can do is then set the scale down to like 2, and then just set this to rings, so it's like a tree, and then we can up the distortion to like 20. Maybe 60 or 100, whatever looks good. Going back to 20 and setting the scale up higher. Okay, so that gives us a little bit of ring distortion. However, that's not good enough. What we need to do now is, of course, make it wood colored. So we're going to open our shotgun reference image, and we're going to color pick some of these colors. So we're going to do color mix RGB, and this will be the factor. Then we're going to color pick, let's say, the bright, and color pick, let's say, the dark, which is a little bit too dark because I picked a shadow area. Okay, so now this still does not look quite like wood. So what we do then is copy the noise texture, copy the texture coordinate, and then we can do some vector mapping. Vector mapping, there we go. And we can offset this by like 3 or 4, and then do another mix. We'll plug this color into the first slot, and then we'll add another color variation, because wood has lots of color variation, not just 2. Did I? Okay, yeah, this is working. So, we don't want this to probably be quite so prominent though. Oh no, we want this to be the factor, and that's color too. Okay, so now we're getting lots of color mixing. But we can even convert this guy down so that he's never perfectly white, so we can see more of the previous colors mixed in. And we can set the location until we're happy. We can even offset it just a tiny bit, and it will be nice and interesting. Then, what I did further than that is I took the original noise texture and I applied that as a displacement, like so. Also, by the way, just so you can see displacement better, also for our final shader, we want this to be mixed. Because, as you probably guessed, we want a glossy shader, like so. But not quite so prominent, so we'll probably put this to like 0.2. 0.1, and set this guy up to like 0.3 roughness. But you can see that the bump is way too strong. So we're going to take, again, a converter color ramp. I use this a ton. And then we're going to set the bump down. Or you can set the dark up, and that's fine too. And that will give us a neat sort of procedural wood. Play around with it until it looks more like wood, but currently I'm trying to move fast here so we can finish up this tutorial. Awesome. So that gets that part done. We're almost done. We're just to the jetpack now. So now we take the jetpack, and the jetpack is going to be a perfectly glossy blue material, because this is like a futuristic kind of thing. Except it's like plastic. It's not going to be metal. So we're going to do shader, mix shader, shader, glossy. The glossy is going to be very small, like 0.025. And this guy is going to be blue. We are actually going to color pick that from the jetpack, which should be this color right here. That's pretty good. And we can then mix this based on a layer weight again, like so. Beautiful. And then you can use a converter color ramp to sort of set like what's reflective and what isn't. So black is less reflective, white is more reflective. We probably want to up the contrast a little bit just for interest. Then we can take the top area of the jetpack, select, 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 C, select. And we're going to assign a new material, which can actually just be the blue one, but then make it a new one. And we want the same thing to happen, except it's just going to be a dark gray, like so. Then we can select the bottom area as well. Like so. And like so, and assign there too. And that makes a robot. I'm not happy with that wood texture. Let's tweak it more. I'm sorry, I just don't like it. It's ugly. Let's change the location to like 0.5 so it's barely offset. And let's tweak the colors some so this is a little bit less different. Okay, I mean, I'll let you all tweak the wood texture as much as you want, but you at least know the process behind it now. Just playing with multiple colors embedded in the wood. And that will create our robot. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and make sure you tune in next week as we will be creating the background as you saw in the title slide for this tutorial. Thanks for watching. Make sure if you enjoyed this video that you subscribe. I appreciate every subscriber that I get. And stay tuned next week. Thanks. Bye.